Welcome to another episode of Metaverse Studio, brought to you by Phygtl, an AR Web3 platform that lets brands create immersive experiences for their users, unlocking a new dimension. And without further ado, here comes our host, Tommaso Di Bartolo.
And we are live. Welcome. Good morning, at least from San Francisco. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from. And great to have you to another episode of the Metaverse Studio, where Web3 minds deconstruct value creation in the Metaverse. And we have a tremendous lineup today of guests that I would like to introduce to you, starting out with Gabrielle Pelicci. Gabrielle Pelicci, PhD, also known as Dr. Gabby, is a Web3 educator, entrepreneur, and consultant. She teaches fundamental principles of blockchain, NFTs, emerging technologies, and the Metaverse. Gabrielle, what a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here with all these powerful women and having you as an ally to support us on our journey into Web3. Thanks so much.
The pleasure is all mine. And we have Lavinia Osbourne. Lavinia D. Osbourne is an established agent for change in blockchain and an entrepreneur at the vanguard of NFT development and futurist for the emergent Metaverse. Lavinia, what a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here also and be part of Mission Impact, part of this podcast. And as Gabrielle said, it's awesome to have a male ally as part of the works as well.
What a great pleasure. Avery Akkineni. I hope I didn't butcher your family name, right? Is this correct?
No,
Avery?
it's exactly perfect. Thanks, Tommaso. I'm Avery Akkineni. I run Vayner3, which is a Web3 consultancy, and we've had the good fortune to be at this for about 18 months, helping enterprises navigate all the amazing things that Web3 has to offer, from NFTs and the Metaverse to blockchain and crypto.
I appreciate the introduction, Avery. What a pleasure to have you. And last but not least, we have a great co-host today, Anne-Marie Enns. Anne-Marie is an award-winning event producer who loves bringing together incredible people to create incredible connections. She's the executive producer of Immerse Global Summit and global event director for the VR/AR Association. Anne-Marie, what a pleasure to have you and to co-host this episode with you today.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited to be on board with all these spectacular women. And today we're going to talk about Web3 and what it means to our panelists, how it looks now, and how we can prepare for the future. We're going to talk about why diversity is important in Web3 and how we're creating immersive worlds. So I can't wait to get started and get into this with everyone.
This is so intriguing, and I'm burning to hear your lessons learned in Web3 and Metaverse, right? The topic here is Metaverse and value creation. We have a bunch of highlights that Anne-Marie alluded to that we are going to break down. Why don't we start with value creation? We are, how long now? Since maybe October, the official Metaverse word was coined, right, by a major player. Since then, to be frankly, right, the market has really awoken to this Metaverse need, not trend, right? The need that we have been developing over years, right? What are we seeing that is behaviorally changing? And why do we need this thing called the Metaverse, right? Let's start with some fundamentals. Who would like to go first? Maybe Lavinia, how about you, right? Why the Metaverse? How do you feel about that?
I like the term the Metaverse because when we think about the word, let's take away meta. And then you got verse. And when you think about verse, you think about a universe, right? And we belong to a universe. And so when I think about meta, and I know meta is Greek or Latin, but I can't remember what the meta stands for. Do any of you ladies know what meta stands for in Greek or Latin? Beyond. I do know, but I just don't recall. Beyond. Okay, so beyond the verse, right? So it's beyond so it's beyond what we actually know, what we tangibly can feel and touch and smell. And for me, that is what the metaverse is all about. It's beyond our reality. And the idea around the metaverse is creation. And isn't that what human beings are great at? Creating. So to me, in the metaverse, in conjunction with blockchain, and blockchain being about transparency. Blockchain is about trackability, traceability, and decentralization, and removing that gatekeeper. And especially if you've always felt like you've been kept out of the gates, you're not allowed in. You're looking at the metaverse, you're looking at creation, and you're looking at all of those things, all the problems that you may have faced as an individual, your community that is representative of you has faced. And you're looking at the metaverse as a new way to go beyond the realities that have been and create something that will be. And even with the challenges that come with that, it's magical, it's beautiful, and it's an opportunity that so many people have been waiting for and never even realized they were waiting for it. So that's what the metaverse means to me.
That's beautiful, Lavinia. So why the metaverse? Lavinia says beyond creation and opportunity. Gabrielle, why the metaverse?
I think it's right place at the right time. I think we have to talk about it in the context of what's happening globally. I think globally we had the pandemic and everyone was shut in the house for a very long time. People were very scared, and people started to rethink their jobs, and they started to rethink their lifestyle, and they started to rethink their financial situation and what was meaningful to them. And I think that was one of the reasons that we got this increased awareness and intensity around blockchain, crypto, all of these things. I think we also became acutely aware that there are a lot of global problems. There's a lot of challenges that we're facing with the environment. There's challenges we're facing with economies in developing countries. There's challenges that we're facing even with too much immersion into technology. We're seeing the impacts of too much digital time, too much social media time, and the distribution of news that's not real and things like that. So I think to take metaverse in the context, everyone was craving something that, like Lavinia said, gives new opportunity, gives new transparency, gives new community. Everything that I do comes from a place of community and connection with other people. I got into the Web3 space because I was doing humanitarian work, volunteer work in Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Guatemala, places that have not a lot of people that are banked in rural communities, not a lot of people that have access to funds, but they were wanting to create projects. They were wanting to create permaculture, environmental solutions, things like that. And this was an awesome fit for them. And so I got into this for people, for community. Metaverse is an extension of that. NFT communities are an extension of that. Like leadership trainings, like the Mission Impact Leadership Training that Anne and I are involved with is an extension of that. All of these are ways that people can come together and communicate and collaborate and solve the problems that we have become so acutely aware of.
Very intriguing. Contextualization, right? So the consequence of the macro economies, which then lead as an extension to community. I love it, Gabrielle. What's your perspective, Avery, on why the metaverse right now, right? Why is everybody talking about it, right? What does it mean?
Yeah, Gabrielle, I agree with you. I think the pandemic was an accelerant for people spending time in digital worlds. And, during that time, we saw such increased adoption of things like, if this were a few years ago, maybe we would even be in person doing a session like this. And now it's so normal to do things on Zoom all across the world. That accelerated remote work. It accelerated time spent in digital mediums and continued this trend that we've seen for the last 20 years of increasing time spent on digital, and that number is only going up, not just for the developed world, but also for the developing world, whose first experience with computing has really been on mobile devices, where they can now, leapfrog a lot of the more Western world with using mobile banking and digital payments and digital experiences in a really fast and effective way. I think that the metaverse is such a hot topic right now because it's the next iteration of the internet. And, if we talk about Web 1 and the concept of being able to access information at an unprecedented rate, Google clearly led a lot of that initial work along with companies like Yahoo and being able to consume content and make it available at the touch of a button. Web 2 allowed that sort of bi-directional communication. You could share content as a user easily and simply in a way that had never happened before. And now we're sort of starting to enter the early days of Web3. And I think the metaverse is part of that, where you can read information, you can write information, you can own information. And as part of that, you're seeing these immersive digital experiences where you actually have the opportunity to own certain things. I will say I'm probably a little bit less bullish on the metaverse in the immediate term than some of these ladies. I think while the promise of the metaverse is really exciting, the reality is it's very, 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 very early for the development of this metaverse as we believe it can exist today. I think it's coming, but probably not quite here yet.
So to follow up on that, and I think that that's an amazing point, how do we prepare for Web3 becoming mainstream? Because we all work in this space. We eat, live, and breathe it through our jobs. We were talking about the metaverse before it was a term, and producing events in it and building communities in it. But how does the general person, or even us, because we're kind of in it, but maybe we're too in it in certain ways, how do we prepare for it becoming mainstream? And what areas do we not want to fall into that we saw in Web 2 and Web 1 or in other emerging technologies?
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in here. I think one thing that's very top of mind, at least for us at Vayner, is sort of maintaining some of the principles of the early days of Web3, which include the ability for individual users to create a more equitable economic model. In the last 2 decades, we've seen just so much value created through digital technologies, but that's really accrued to a very small number of companies, the duopoly being 2 that come to mind, versus being equitably shared between the users of the technology, the creators of the technology, and of course the creators of the content that lives on that technology. So I think we want to be very careful that the early principles of Web3 flow into this next iteration of the metaverse versus just being another bolt-on product for some of the big tech companies that exist already. And I think we're going to see a friction here because some of these big tech companies can afford to invest billions of dollars in being ahead of this. But I will say, and Evan Spiegel said this the other day, and I agree with him, funding is not a predictor. It's not always a predictor of technological progress or of winning the market. Yes, obviously it helps, but when you're constrained financially, you have to make hard design choices that often allow a better clarity. So I do believe that we're going to see some new entrants to the space come in and do things that are very disruptive, even if they're far less well-funded than the big tech companies today.
Yeah, I'll jump in as well. I think the reason I'm so bullish on education and training programs and public speaking and going on every podcast and doing all the things is because I think we need to hurry up and let everybody know what's coming. Like in one of my posts that I wrote, I said that there's a tsunami of change that's coming to all industries. The amount of change is like, it's almost incomprehensible. And the people that, yes, we're very, very early, but the more people that we can bring in as early adopters that are in disenfranchised communities or in communities that would benefit the most from being early, those are the communities that I think we need to do the most outreach to now, so that they're educated, so that they're investing, so that they're creating, so that they're developing, so that they're part of this and they get the benefit of being early to this.
I think there's a huge responsibility in the fact that we are early, and that responsibility is trying to create a space that is safe, secure, and supportive for those different individuals, communities, networks, friends, and family coming in.
This podcast is powered by Phygtl, with a special guest from Women of the Future. To Metaverse.
I have been part of certain conversations where I've been told being scammed is part of the is part of being is part of the kind of ritual of being in this space. And it's not that I disagree with the statement, because I understood where the statement was coming from. But what my question was, what do you do about it? You can't just say, well, it's part and parcel of being in this space, being scammed. And so just eat it up, swallow it, deal with it, don't complain about it. I don't agree with that. So as much as I'm very bullish about this space, the metaverse, I'm also bullish about how do we protect, or how do we learn from all the scams that are happening in order to protect new people coming in, because all of these scams are going to put people off, and all they're going to see in this space or read about this space is that it is a scam and how much people have lost or how much money people have made. And for me, I came into this space because of what I saw as an ideology around social impact and doing good, blockchain for good, and blockchain enterprise for good. And that is what I preach on. So yeah, I think that's super important about the space that we're creating for mass adoption to happen.
That's beautiful, Lavinia. So on one hand, we say, well, there is no doubt that the metaverse is the consequence of the future, the more mature internet, because Web 2 has reached its limit, right? And then Gabrielle jumps in and says, well, we need to educate. We need to be out there, right? We need to share with others. And Lavinia says, well, but there is also a danger to this. There is opportunity, but also there are still some things that we need to basically do our homework, right? We've been seeing over the last month, and maybe, let's call it maximum a year and a half. And this is, by the way, my Jack Russell in my background, who also wants to be part of the Metaverse Studio. Yeah, you are live now. We have seen over the last month that there are a couple of taglines, right? Many companies jumping, or some companies jumping into it, right? And I have the feeling, even if you measure that based on data, right, and evidences, that there is more a buzz from a company seeking to experiment, which is great and awesome, right? It's all about learning. But we haven't really activated mass markets, right? So consumer are yet not there, right? So we see that there are some gamers or early crypto aficionados that are joining some games on blockchain that are self-coining themselves to be metaverse. Pause. This is the rhetorical pause, right? So, but what I'm asking here is, well, what is it that we need to go mass market? Like, is this what we see today, those games on a blockchain, which is great, right? What the metaverse is going to be, and what do we need to empower masses, me, you, to say, yes, I'm living in the metaverse, I'm not playing in the metaverse? Any ideas here? Maybe Avery, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that living in the metaverse right now it's a little bit of how you define it, right? Like, you could define the metaverse as like even this, right? Like a virtual experience where we're all engaging. But I think that the thing that we're really bullish on at Vayner 3 is participating in the early days of Web 3, which can mean, maybe it means you're in Sandbox or Decentraland, but it also can mean starting to develop your digital identity through digital wallet. We feel like the digital wallet's going to be the next format of digital self-expression that really matters. So whether that means getting set up with your first MetaMask, Lavinia, I totally hear your perspective that there's a lot of nefarious activity in the space today, and that can be intimidating for users. So maybe it's also getting set up with something on Flow, collecting your first NFL all day, something like that. So you start building that digital identity. I think that's really the gateway for a lot of people. And one thing that I think is also helps sort of bridge that chasm is, collecting NFTs or starting to be involved in that community in a way that provides a direct utility and benefit. So whether that's access to a ticket, like your NFT is a ticket to an event, your NFT can be redeemed for a physical item, your NFT gets you access to this specific community. I think that really helps sort of new users participate and be a part of this ecosystem and be a part of these early days of Web3, if that's something that's interesting. Or it could be as simple as starting to, set up your Coinbase account or get your first crypto. And each individual person has to pick something that's genuinely interesting to them. Like, if you love basketball, maybe you're collecting Top Shot. If you believe in financial freedom and empowerment, maybe you're starting to get set up with crypto. If you love gaming, maybe you're playing in Fortnite or Roblox or starting to bridge into some of the Web3 games. I think it depends a little bit person to person what your actual interest is. But starting to participate across a couple of those disciplines, I think, is the right way for users to get into it, not feel like I have to be living my whole life in the metaverse.
Cool. Mass market through your interest at the end of the day, right? We are not reinventing anything, right? And then at the center of this, you mentioned something what the digital ID, right? For those who are out there, it's basically I call it your backpack, right? Or whatever you do on this Web3 realm is collected, meaning your behavior, your friends, your connections, your likes and dislikes, your coins, your tokens, your non-fungible tokens, right? And you have this backpack. So rather than you pushing it towards others, towards monopolists that own your content, now we own it, right? That creates your digital ID, right? And so you can ideally seamlessly in the future, seamlessly, right? Go from environment to environment, right? Gabrielle, what's your take in terms of what needs to be done in order to activate mass market in this realm called the metaverse?
I love the way you say realm, because I say it realm and you say realm.
Sometimes
really
I cannot hide my Italian, German, Brazilian accent.
I know, it makes me happy. I think the whole industry as a whole is in an incubator phase. Like the whole industry, the whole sector is in this generative kind of boom, and it hasn't really come out to mass adoption. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. One is that it's still really challenging even to download a wallet and figure out how to get an NFT. Like I continually have to sit with people and explain it. It's not intuitive yet. The user experience is not there yet. There are 300 metaverses. When I talk to people about the metaverse, they're like, which one? Like, which one should I go to? And like, what do I do when I get there? And will I know anyone? And will I be in danger? I actually hear a lot of times about from the women that we're teaching in the program, like, is it safe to go in there? What's going to happen when I'm in there? I'm connecting my wallet. Is someone going to take the money? Like, what? I don't understand. Can my kids go in there? Is it safe for my children to go in there? And there isn't, the UX isn't there. It's just not. People also, their emotional relationship to money needs to shift a bit, and it needs to encompass these digital assets, right? We're very emotionally charged about finance, about money. There's scarcity. The thing about Web3 that I love, it's a different level of consciousness. The communities that I'm in, they're in an abundance mindset, a creativity mindset, a community mindset. You know, there's this energy and it's contagious, which is why I continue to stay in it. But to transition from this, like, you know, get a paycheck and make some money and protect the money and this and this attachment to the physical, it really requires an opening up that, you know, we have to guide people not just in the technicalities of getting the MetaMask on your phone, but in like the emotional experience of feeling confident, feeling comfortable, feeling like you belong in the Web3 space. So many women tell us that, you know, I'm not sure if I belong here. I don't have a background in tech. Like, I have a PhD in health. Like, my background, like, I did massage therapy all through grad school to pay my rent. Like, you don't have to be an expert in tech. And so I think there's many things that we are going to, you know, overcome in order to really see the larger community participate in this.
I love it. So shifting basically from this perspective or understanding or this connotation, right, of, hey, it's all about making money, right, towards this spirit of abundance. Abundance means giving, co-creation, being together, right, doing it together, right, and this leads then to this feeling of, well, we actually belong there, right? We found our segment, our niche, like Avery is saying, right? And then you start actually, rather than just transactionally financial oriented transaction, right? You start to contributing towards something that has a major meaning. Lavinia, what's your perspective? What needs to be done in order to go mass market with Metaverse? What are your thoughts here that you can share with our audience?
Sure. So my thoughts, I love what you said, Gabrielle, about the abundant mindset of creativity, community. And the truth of the matter is most people are not risk takers. You know, people who are in this space are in it because something's been ignited. They've had a paradigm shift. They feel like they can make money. People come into this space for a different reason, and they come into it through different pathways. And one of the things that Women in Blockchain Talks does is we do a lot of outreaching. We need to go to where the people are. We need to introduce this space, this concept, in a way that is fun and appeasing. And it takes a lot of work to do to outreach. It takes a lot of work. I mean, I've been in the entrepreneurial space for a number of years, and one of the things that I learned at the beginning of my journey was about attraction marketing, but attraction marketing for the metaverse, for the mass adoption of this space, is not going to work. It means people who know it, and I do think there's a responsibility for people who are in this space, who understand this space, to teach other people, to promote it, in order to bring others in. Now, I am just a small fish. All of us are, to a degree, small fishes, and we could talk to our community, we could talk to our network, our friends and family. But I believe that mass adoption will come, fortunately or unfortunately, with regulation and compliance. Because like I said, people are not going to come into a space that they fear. They're not going to come into a space where they think they're going to get scammed, or they're not going to get support. And so, the UK have said they want to be the digital hub of the world. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. They've been the financial epicenter for hundreds and hundreds of years. So who knows if they're able to carry that off. I personally don't think they can. I think that the UAE, the likes of Dubai, are so far ahead in that regard. They'll probably be the epicenter. However, there is still some weight to the London financial, history, let's just put it that way. And so I personally think that it is going to take governments, but this is what I say in regards to this. The government can teach the education, or help with the education of understanding and learning about this space. But that doesn't mean that people are actually going to take up what the government is offering. But if the government can just open that conversation, when the likes of us then have that conversation with someone, they'll be like, oh yeah, I heard the government, or, a representative that people follow, because so many people are sheeps. And I say that in a very respectful way, but they are, and they don't like to take risks. And they'll be like, oh, I heard that from the Chancellor of the Exchequer. I know what that word means. And so when you bring that conversation to them, they're more open. And that, to me, is what's going to create mass adoption. People with authority, governmental, put in place by the government, speaking about this in a positive term rather than a negative term. And so that when you speak, people will then follow. And then in addition to that, outreach. What do we do? How do we create outreach programs to introduce people to this space?
That's amazing. And I think that education is so important, whether it's on a high level and an extreme level, or just us speaking to one another and speaking to our friends and family about it. I know we only have a few minutes left, so we're going to do a really quick lightning question. So maybe about 30 seconds for each of us, although we could talk about this all day long. So 10 years down the road, what is the metaverse like? What do you see? What would you like to see? What are your predictions for that? Let's start with you, Gabrielle.
In an ambitious vision, one that's probably too ambitious, it's ubiquitous. It's ubiquitous. It's like in my glasses that I'm wearing right now, it's in my jewelry, and it's like accessible, all the time to me. It's augmented. I can be teaching and other students can be wearing things that they can access what I'm teaching without sitting down like this at a laptop, looking at a screen, So for me, it's more embodied, it's more physical, it's more accessible, and it's more ubiquitous.
Amazing. Lavinia, how about yourself?
Well, needless to say, I want it to be diverse. I know that people will have their avatars, but I just want the avatars to be representative of the world that we live in. I just want to see something that is representative of the world we live in. And like Gabrielle said, I want it to be accessible. I want it to be safe. I want it to be safe, secure, and supportive, whatever that looks like. So yeah, accessible, safe, supportive, and diverse and inclusive.
Perfect. And Avery, your vision for 10 years?
Yeah, I think in 10 years, I agree with Gabrielle. I think it will be ubiquitous. And Lavinia, you bring up a great point around being diverse. And I think sometimes that diversity will be even beyond like human skin tones, right? Like I have a guy on my team who identifies as his CryptoPunk, which is green and has a clown nose. And I think that's amazing. People should feel free to express who they want to be, even if that's not something we've seen in the real world. I do think, though, that Web3 and the metaverse will just be something that's part of our daily lives without so much discussion around it. Like the internet is part of our daily lives now. It's not something we talk about. We don't talk about the World Wide Web every day. It just is. And I believe that that's in 10 years where we'll be with a lot of this technology. You'll use it without needing to know every single element that went into it. And it will be easy and simple is beautiful. So I'm really looking forward to the progress of this space over the coming decade.
And with this vision in our mind, right, Gabrielle Pelicci, Avery Akkineni, Lavinia Osbourne, and my co-host Anne-Marie, thank you so much for another episode in Metaverse Studio. And as always, I'll meet you in the Metaverse. Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching our podcast. Stay tuned on our social media network and see you in the Metaverse.